The traveling theater troupe left Thatcher Ellis behind without so much as a backward glance, their painted wagons vanishing into the swirling snowstorm as if he had never existed at all. He stood alone on the frozen road, his threadbare costume still clinging to his body beneath a coat that offered little warmth, watching the last wagon disappear into the white void. They had blamed him for the disastrous performance in the last town, never mind that half the troupe had been drunk and the other half sick with fever. Someone had to be the scapegoat, and Thatcher, the newest member, the one without family or connections, had been the obvious choice. The wind howled across the empty landscape, cutting through his layers like they were nothing more than paper. He had perhaps an hour before the cold became deadly, maybe two if he was lucky. The road stretched in both directions, equally desolate, equally hopeless. Behind him lay the town that had driven them out with threats and stones. Ahead, nothing but wilderness and the faint promise of another settlement, days away on foot. Thatcher pulled his coat tighter and began walking, each step a negotiation with his freezing feet. The snow fell heavier now, obscuring the road, turning the world into an endless expanse of white and gray. He had been an actor for 3 years, before that a farmhand, before that an orphan scraping by on the streets of a coastal city, whose name he rarely spoke aloud. Survival was something he understood in his bones, even if the odds were never in his favor. The shape materialized out of the storm so gradually he almost walked past it. A dark mass huddled at the side of the road, half buried in snow. His first thought was that it was a fallen tree or perhaps a dead animal. But as he drew closer, his heart seized with recognition. It was a person. No, not a person. An orc. She lay curled on her side, her green skin turned a sickly pale color, almost blue at the extremities. She wore what had once been leather armor, now torn and inadequate against the storm. Her dark hair was crusted with ice, her lips the color of slate. She was young, perhaps younger than him, with the small tusks and delicate features that marked her as barely past adolescence. Thatcher's first instinct was to keep walking. Orcs were dangerous, everyone knew that. They raided human settlements, killed without mercy, ate human flesh according to the stories. Getting involved with one, even a dying one, was asking for trouble. But as he stood there, the wind screaming around him, he found he could not take another step forward. His conscience, that troublesome thing that had gotten him in so much difficulty over the years, would not allow it. She was dying. Whatever else she might be, she was a living creature freezing to death alone in a blizzard. He knelt beside her, his knees sinking into the snow. Her eyes were closed, her breathing so shallow he had to lean close to detect it at all. When he touched her arm, her skin was like ice, hard and unyielding. She did not respond to his touch, did not move or make a sound. "Can you hear me?" he asked, knowing it was probably futile. No response. She was too far gone, her body shutting down to conserve whatever warmth remained. Thatcher looked around desperately, searching for shelter. The road offered nothing, just open land and the merciless storm. Then, perhaps 50 yards away, he spotted what might have been a structure, a dark smudge against the white. He had no idea if it was real or a trick of the storm, but it was the only chance either of them had. He could not carry her. She was too heavy, too tall. But he could drag her. He hooked his arms under her shoulders and began pulling her through the snow, his feet slipping, his muscles screaming with effort. Every few yards he had to stop and rest, gasping for air, his lungs burning from the cold. The structure seemed to grow no closer, as if the storm was pushing them back for every foot they gained. But Thatcher had learned long ago that the only way to survive was to keep moving, to refuse to give up even when giving up seemed like the only reasonable option. So he pulled and rested and pulled again, dragging the unconscious orc girl through the snow inch by agonizing inch. The structure, when he finally reached it, turned out to be an abandoned shepherd's hut, 3 walls of stone and a partially collapsed roof. It was not much, but it blocked the worst of the wind, and that made it a palace as far as Thatcher was concerned. He pulled her inside, into the driest corner, and then collapsed beside her, his entire body shaking with exhaustion and cold. For several minutes he could do nothing but breathe, watching the clouds of vapor rise from his mouth. His fingers were numb, his toes beyond feeling. If he did not get warm soon, he would die just as surely as the orc girl would. Fire. He needed fire. The thought galvanized him into action. He searched the hut, finding a few pieces of rotted wood that might burn if he could get them started. His pack, meager as it was, contained flint and steel. The troupe had made him responsible for starting the morning fires, one of the many menial tasks they had assigned him. Now that despised chore might save his life, his hands shook so badly he could barely hold the flint. It took a dozen tries to produce even a spark, and another dozen to get that spark to catch on the bit of char cloth he kept for tinder. But finally, miraculously, a tiny flame bloomed. He fed it carefully, adding the smallest twigs first, then larger pieces, nursing it with the care of a mother tending a newborn. The fire grew, casting flickering light across the stone walls. The warmth was immediate and glorious, though nowhere near enough. The partially collapsed roof let in snow and wind, and the fire was small, but it was life, and that was everything. Thatcher turned his attention to the orc girl. She had not moved, had not responded at all to being dragged through the snow or deposited in the hut. Her breathing remained terrifyingly shallow, her skin that awful bluish-pale color. She was dying, and the small fire was not going to be enough to save her. He knew what he had to do, even though the thought filled him with a complicated mix of fear and embarrassment. In extreme cold, when someone was on the edge of freezing to death, the fastest way to warm them was with body heat. Skin-to-skin contact, sharing warmth directly. He had seen it done once when he was a child, when a fisherman had fallen through winter ice. The man's brother had stripped both of them down and held him until the shaking stopped, until life returned to his limbs. Thatcher looked at the orc girl, at her ice-crusted hair and blue-tinged lips, and made his decision. He moved her closer to the fire, as close as he dared without risking sparks catching on her clothes. Then he removed his wet outer layers, stripping down to his undershirt and trousers. The cold bit into him immediately, but he ignored it. He carefully removed her torn armor, her outer clothing, leaving her in the thin shift she wore beneath. Even unconscious, even half-frozen, he felt the need to preserve whatever modesty he could. Then he lay down beside her and pulled his coat over both of them, wrapping his arms around her rigid form. The cold of her body was shocking, like embracing a corpse. She was all hard muscle and frozen skin, unmoving, barely breathing. Thatcher held her anyway, pressing his chest against her back, his legs against hers, trying to share what little warmth he had. He kept one hand free to tend the fire, adding wood whenever it burned low, but the rest of him he dedicated to this strange, desperate attempt to save a life. Time became meaningless. The storm raged outside, the fire crackled and popped, and Thatcher held an orc girl he did not know and tried not to think about how insane this all was. His mother, if she were still alive, would have said he was touched in the head. The theater troupe would have called him a fool. Most humans would have been horrified at the very idea. But slowly, gradually, he felt her begin to warm. It was almost imperceptible at first, a slight softening of her frozen flesh, a hint of give where before there had been only rigid cold. He pressed closer, rubbing his hands along her arms, her shoulders, anywhere he could reach, trying to stimulate circulation, to bring blood back to her extremities. The shaking started perhaps an hour after he had begun holding her, though he could not be certain of the time. It started as small tremors, barely noticeable, then built into violent shuddering that shook her entire body. Her teeth chattered, a strange clicking sound that echoed in the small space. Her muscles contracted and released in waves, fighting to generate heat. Thatcher held her through it all, murmuring nonsense words of comfort even though she could not hear them, keeping the fire fed with his free hand, refusing to let go. The shaking was actually a good sign. It meant her body was warming, waking up from its frozen state. But it was also terrifying, the violence of it, the way her entire frame convulsed against him. "It is all right," he heard himself saying, his lips close to her ear. "You are warming up. Just hold on. The shaking will stop." He had no idea if that was true, if she would survive, but he said it anyway, as much for himself as for her. The shaking went on, for what felt like hours. Thatcher's arms ached from holding her, his body exhausted from the effort of keeping them both warm. The fire burned low several times, and each time he had to carefully extricate one arm to add more wood, then quickly return to holding her, maintaining that crucial contact. Finally, slowly, the violent shaking began to subside. The tremors grew less intense, the chattering of her teeth less frequent. Her breathing deepened, became more regular. Color started to return to her skin, that distinctive green replacing the deathly blue pale. When the shaking finally stopped completely, Thatcher felt a surge of relief so intense it brought tears to his eyes. She was alive. She was going to survive. He continued to hold her, unwilling to risk her getting cold again, and at some point, exhausted beyond measure, he fell asleep with his arms still wrapped around her. When Thatcher woke, the storm had passed, weak sunlight filtering through the gaps in the collapsed roof. The fire had burned down to embers, but the air in the hut was no longer bitterly cold. And the orc girl in his arms was awake. She had gone completely still, her body tense, but she had not tried to pull away. Thatcher realized with a start that she was awake and aware, and he was holding her in a state of partial undress, and this had to be the most awkward situation he had ever found himself in. He released her immediately, scooting backward, his face burning. "I am sorry. You were freezing. I had to share body heat. I did not." She rolled over to face him, and he got his first good look at her. She was perhaps 18 or 19, with a strong, featured face that would have been harsh if not for the vulnerability in her amber eyes. Her tusks were small, barely protruding from her lower lip, and her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her shoulders. Despite the ordeal, despite the obvious confusion in her expression, there was a dignity to her that struck him immediately. "You saved me," she said, her voice rough from cold and disuse. "It was not a question. I found you on the road. You were dying from the cold." Thatcher looked away, uncomfortable under her direct gaze. "I brought you here, made a fire. You were too far gone for just the fire to help, so I—" He gestured helplessly at the situation, at their state of undress. She looked down at herself, at the coat covering her, then back at him. Something shifted in her expression, but he could not rate it. "You should have left me." "Probably," he admitted, "but I could not." "Why?" The question was blunt, demanding. Thatcher met her eyes. "Because you would have died. I am an orc. Humans do not help orcs. Well, this human does, apparently." She stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was real or some fever dream conjured by her dying mind. Then slowly she sat up, keeping the coat wrapped around her. "What is your name?" Thatcher Ellis. "I was with a traveling theater troupe until yesterday when they decided I was not worth keeping around." He tried for a wry smile. "Seems I have a talent for being unwanted." "I am Karga," she said simply, "daughter of Chief Grolmak of the Frostbite clan." She paused and pain flickered across her face. "Or I do not know if I still am." "What happened to you?" Thatcher asked, then immediately regretted the question. "You do not have to tell me, I am sorry." But Karga was already speaking, her voice flat, emotionless. "My clan arranged a marriage for me. To Thrusk of the Bloodrock clan, a warrior 20 years my senior who already has 2 wives. I refused. Thrusk was not pleased. Neither was my father. They said I was being foolish, that such an alliance would strengthen both clans, that my wants did not matter." She pulled the coat tighter around herself. "I ran. I thought I could reach the southern territories, find a clan that might take me in without knowing who I was. But the storm came and I was not prepared. I remember the cold getting worse, remember falling. After that, nothing until I woke in your arms." Thatcher absorbed this quietly. It was a story he understood all too well, the weight of expectations, the trap of other people's plans for your life. He had run from such things himself more than once. "For what it is worth," he said, "I think you were right to refuse." Karga looked at him sharply. "You do not know anything about orc traditions." "I know about forced marriages. I know about people who think they own you just because they are older or stronger or more powerful." He fed another piece of wood to the embers, coaxing them back into flame. "I know what it is like to be told your wants do not matter." She was quiet for a long time, watching the fire grow. Finally she said, "Thank you for not leaving me, for—" She hesitated and he saw color darken her green cheeks. "For what you did. I know it must have been uncomfortable." "It was that or let you die," Thatcher said simply. "Not much of a choice, really. For most humans, it would have been an easy choice. Let the savage orc freeze. Well, I have never been very good at being like most humans." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Clearly." They spent the rest of that day in the hut, recovering from their ordeal. Karga's clothes were still damp, so Thatcher draped them near the fire to dry. His own outer layers were equally wet, creating a small forest of drying fabric around the flames. They stayed wrapped in what dry clothes remained, maintaining a careful distance now that the immediate crisis had passed. Thatcher had a little food in his pack, some hardtack and dried meat that the troupe had missed when they evicted him. It was not much, but he split it evenly and they ate in companionable silence. "Where were you going?" Karga asked eventually, "before you found me?" "Nowhere in particular," Thatcher admitted. "There is supposed to be a town called Millbrook about 3 days north on foot. I was hoping to make it there, maybe find work." "Millbrook is 4 days from here, and that is if the weather holds," Karga said. "You would not have made it." "Probably not," he agreed. "But what else was I going to do? I could not go back to the last town, and staying on the road meant freezing. At least walking gave me a chance. You are either very brave or very stupid." "Can it be both?" This time her smile was fuller, showing her small tusks. "Yes, I think it can be both." As the day wore on, they talked more, sharing pieces of their lives in the way that people do when circumstances have forced an unlikely intimacy. Thatcher told her about growing up in an orphanage, about learning to act in order to avoid the worst beatings, about how that skill had eventually led him to the theater. Karga spoke of life in an orc clan, of the rigid hierarchies and fierce loyalties, of the constant pressure to be strong, to never show weakness. "It is not all bad," she said, staring into the fire. "There is honor in the clan, real honor. When an orc gives their word, it is binding. When they call you family, they will die to protect you." She paused. But that same honor can become a cage, duty can suffocate you, and if you step outside the lines they have drawn, you become nothing, less than nothing. Humans are not so different, Thatcher said. We just pretend to give people choices, then punish them when they make the wrong ones. Night fell, and with it came the question they had both been avoiding. There was only one coat big enough to cover both of them, and while Karga was no longer dying, the temperature in the hut would drop dangerously low once the fire burned down. "We should sleep close to the fire," Thatcher said carefully. "For warmth." Karga looked at him, her amber eyes unreadable. "You are afraid I will think you are taking advantage." "Yes," he admitted. "You have already been through enough. I do not want you to think." "I do not think that," she said firmly. "You had every opportunity last night when I was unconscious and helpless. You did nothing but save my life." "I trust you, Thatcher Ellis." The simple declaration moved him more than he wanted to admit. "Thank you." They lay down together, more comfortable than the night before, but still maintaining a careful awareness of boundaries. Thatcher kept his back to her, giving her space, but at some point during the night he woke to find her pressed against him, seeking warmth in her sleep. He did not move away. Instead, he carefully adjusted the coat to cover them both better, then let himself drift back to sleep. Morning brought the decision they had both been putting off. They could not stay in the hut forever. They needed food, shelter, and a plan. "You should go to Millbrook," Karga said as they prepared to leave. "There will be work there, and it is a large enough town that you can disappear, start over." "What will you do?" Thatcher asked. She shrugged, the gesture attempting nonchalance but not quite achieving it. "Keep heading south. Find somewhere to go to ground until spring. Try to figure out what comes next. Alone in winter with no supplies. I am an orc. We are tough." "You are also the person who almost froze to death 2 days ago." Karga's jaw tightened. "What do you suggest?" Thatcher took a breath, hardly believing what he was about to propose. "Come with me to Millbrook." She stared at him. "You cannot be serious." "Why not?" "Because I am an orc and Millbrook is a human town. They will drive me out or worse." "Not if you are with me, not if I vouch for you." "And why would anyone listen to you?" "You are a homeless actor with no money and no prospects." "True," Thatcher admitted. "But I am a human homeless actor, which gives me more standing than you would have alone. At least with me, you have a chance to get inside, to get food and shelter. We can figure out the rest from there." Karga looked away, and he could see the conflict playing across her face. Pride warring with practicality, independence fighting against the reality of her situation. "You owe me nothing," Thatcher said quietly. "I know that, and if you want to go south, I will not stop you, but—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I have spent my whole life alone, Karga, moving from place to place, never belonging anywhere, never having anyone I could count on. For once, I would like some company, someone to watch my back, someone to talk to in the evening. If that someone happens to be an orc girl who is too stubborn for her own good, well, I can live with that." She turned back to him, and he saw something vulnerable in her eyes, something that matched the lonely ache in his own chest. "You truly want me to come with you?" "Yes." "Even though it will make everything harder, even though people will hate you for associating with me?" "I am already hated, or at least unwanted. What is a little more?" Karga laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. "You are insane." "Probably. Is that a yes?" She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Yes, I will come with you to Millbrook, but when people try to kill us, I reserve the right to say I told you so." "Fair enough." They set out that morning, walking north along the road that was now visible in the bright winter sunlight. The storm had left everything covered in a fresh blanket of white, pristine and beautiful, hiding the dangers beneath. They had between them one coat, one mostly empty pack, and a future that promised nothing but difficulty. But they also had each other, and for two people who had spent their lives alone, that was more than they had ever expected to have. The first 2 days of travel were hard but not unbearable. The weather held, cold but clear, and they made decent progress. They found a barn the first night, sneaking in after dark and sleeping in the hay. The farmer never knew they were there. The second night they camped in a small cave, building a fire and sharing the last of Thatcher's food. "Tomorrow we need to find more supplies," Thatcher said, poking at the fire with a stick. "Or we are going to be in trouble." "I can hunt," Karga offered, "if we can find an area with game. You know how to hunt. All orcs learn to hunt. It is part of our training." She flexed her hands, and he noticed for the first time how strong they looked capable. "I can make snares, track prey, dress a kill. My father made sure I knew all the skills a warrior should have, even if he never expected me to marry when I wanted." "That is more useful than anything I can do," Thatcher said ruefully. "I can juggle, recite poetry, and do a passable impression of a drunk nobleman, none of which helps us eat." "You can make fire and you think quickly in a crisis," Karga pointed out. "Those are valuable skills, I suppose." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you miss it?" "Your clan?" Karga's expression grew distant. "Parts of it. I miss my mother, though she sided with my father in the end. I miss my younger brother, Grak. He is only 12, still training. I miss the certainty of it all, knowing exactly where I stood, what was expected of me." She paused. "But I do not miss the cage, and I do not miss being told that my life belonged to everyone except me." "I understand that," Thatcher said softly. That night, as they settled down to sleep, Karga spoke into the darkness. "Thatcher." "Yes." "Why did you really ask me to come with you, the truth?" He considered lying or deflecting, but something about the quiet intimacy of the cave, the firelight dancing on stone walls, made him want to be honest. "Because when I held you that first night when I was trying to keep you alive, I realized something. I realized I was tired of being alone. Tired of not mattering to anyone, of not having anyone matter to me, and I thought, maybe you felt the same way, maybe we could be less alone together." Silence stretched between them long enough that he wondered if he had said too much, revealed too much. Then Karga's voice came out of the darkness, soft and unguarded. "I feel the same way." The next morning they woke to find fresh snow falling, light flurries that promised to get worse. They pressed on, knowing they needed to reach Millbrook soon. Karga managed to catch 2 rabbits using snares she constructed from materials she found in the woods, and they roasted them that evening, the smell of cooking meat making Thatcher's mouth water. "You are amazing," he said as he ate, savoring every bite. "This is the best thing I have tasted in months." "It is barely seasoned," Karga protested, but he could see she was pleased by the compliment. Still better than moldy hardtack. They reached the outskirts of Millbrook late in the afternoon of the 4th day. It was larger than Thatcher had expected, a proper town with a wooden palisade and guards at the gate. His confidence faltered as he saw the guards, saw the suspicious way they watched everyone who approached. "Maybe this was a bad idea," he muttered. "It is too late for second thoughts now," Karga said. "We are here. We need food and shelter, so we go forward." She was right, of course. They had no choice. Thatcher straightened his shoulders, tried to look like someone who had a right to enter, and walked toward the gate with Karga at his side. The guards spotted her immediately. One of them, a thick-necked man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward, his hand on his sword. "Hold there. What is an orc doing here?" "She is with me," Thatcher said, trying to sound confident. "We are travelers seeking work and lodging." "We do not allow orcs in Millbrook," the guard said flatly. "Too much trouble. She can turn around and go back wherever she came from." "She has done nothing wrong," Thatcher protested. She is just looking for a chance to work, same as anyone. Do not care, no orcs, those are the rules." The guard's hand tightened on his sword hilt. "Now move along before I decide you are trouble too." Thatcher felt Karga tense beside him, felt her preparing to turn away, to accept this rejection as inevitable. And something inside him rebelled against that inevitability, against the unfairness of it all. "What if I can prove she is trustworthy?" he asked. The guard laughed. "You cannot prove that. Orcs are raiders and killers. Everyone knows that. Then let us work for it. Give us the hardest, worst job you have. Let us prove ourselves. If we cause any trouble, any at all, you can throw us out, but give us a chance." The guard looked at his companion, who shrugged. "Eldridge has been looking for someone to clear the old Miller place," the second guard said. "No one wants the job because it is back-breaking work for little pay. And it is supposed to be haunted," the first guard added with a nasty grin. "Ghosts of the Miller family killed by orcs 20 years ago. Seems fitting, sending an orc to clean up the mess her kind made." Thatcher felt Karga flinch beside him but kept his voice steady. "We will take it. Where do we find this Eldridge?" The guards gave them directions to a merchant's shop in town, clearly expecting them to fail, to be driven out by the work or the supposed ghosts. Thatcher did not care about their expectations. He had gotten Karga into the town, and that was what mattered. Eldridge turned out to be a thin, anxious man who ran a dry goods store. When they found him, he looked Karga up and down with obvious distrust, but seemed desperate enough to overlook his prejudices. "The old Miller place has been abandoned for 20 years, he explained. "The buildings are falling apart, the fields are overgrown, the whole property is worthless in its current state. But the land is good, and I have owned it for 10 years now. Been meaning to fix it up, sell it to some young family looking to start a farm. Just never had the time or the labor." "What exactly do you need done?" Thatcher asked. "Everything. The house needs repairs, the barn needs to be torn down and rebuilt, the fields need to be cleared. It is months of work, maybe a year. I can pay a small wage and you can live on the property while you work. There is a root cellar that is still intact, and I will provide basic supplies to get you started." "And if we do all this, then what?" Eldridge hesitated. "If you do good work, honest work, I will pay you a fair wage at the end. Might even be able to find you other work around town, help you get established." It was not much of an offer, but it was more than they had. Thatcher looked at Karga, saw the question in her eyes, and nodded. "We will take it." "Good." Eldridge pulled out a key. "The property is about 2 miles outside of town to the east. Here is the key to the root cellar. I will send a wagon with supplies tomorrow, and one more thing." He fixed them both with a stern look. "If there is any trouble, any at all, the deal is off and you are both out. Understood?" "Understood," Thatcher said. They found the Miller place just before dark, a depressing sight of collapsed buildings and overgrown land. The house was partially standing, one wall completely gone, the roof caved in on one side. The barn was worse, little more than a pile of rotted wood. The field stretched out in all directions, choked with weeds and small trees. "This is going to be a lot of work," Karga said, staring at the ruins. "Yes," Thatcher agreed, "but it is also shelter and a chance. That is more than we had yesterday." The root cellar, as promised, was intact. It was dark and musty, but it was dry and defensible. They climbed down into it, finding it empty except for a few broken crates and the smell of old earth. It would be cramped, but they could make it work. That night they sat at the entrance to the cellar, looking up at the stars. The magnitude of what they had taken on was beginning to sink in, the sheer amount of work required to make this place livable, let alone valuable. "I do not know the first thing about building," Thatcher admitted. "I have no idea how to rebuild a barn or fix a house." "I do," Karga said. Orcs build our own homes, our own fortifications. I know stonework, woodwork, basic construction. I can teach you. And I can hunt, keep us fed while we work, Thatcher said. Wait, no, that is your skill. What can I do? You can plan, organize, figure out the order of operations. You can negotiate with Eldridge for materials. You can use those acting skills to convince people we are not a threat. Karga looked at him. We both have skills, Thatcher. Together we might actually be able to do this. Might being the key word. Better than nothing. The next morning, Eldridge's wagon arrived with supplies. Tools, nails, lumber, food staples, blankets. It was not much, but it was a start. The driver, a young man who looked terrified of Karga, unloaded everything as quickly as possible and fled back to town. They spent that first day just assessing the property, walking every inch of it, figuring out what needed to be done. The list was overwhelming, but Karga, with her practical, organized mind, broke it down into manageable steps. First, we make the root cellar more comfortable, so we have a secure place to sleep and store supplies. Then we clear the debris from the main house, see if any of it is salvageable. After that, we start on basic repairs to make at least part of the house weatherproof. The barn can wait until spring and the fields even longer. One step at a time. Thatcher nodded, grateful for her clarity. One step at a time. They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Mornings were spent clearing debris, afternoons on repairs and construction. Karga worked tirelessly, her orc strength allowing her to lift beams and haul stone that Thatcher could barely budge. He contributed where he could, following her instructions, learning as he went. In the evenings, they would sit by a fire they built in the cleared area near the house, eating whatever Karga had managed to hunt or trap during breaks in the work. They talked, sharing more stories, learning each other's quirks and habits. Thatcher discovered that Karga had a dry, subtle sense of humor, that she sang while she worked, low, rumbling orc songs in a language he did not understand. Karga learned that Thatcher could find beauty in the smallest things, that he told stories to make the work pass faster, that he had a gift for making her laugh even when she was exhausted. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted between them. The careful distance they had maintained began to shrink. They worked closer together, found excuses to touch, a hand steadying another on a ladder, shoulders bumping as they carried wood. They lingered over evening meals, talking late into the night, reluctant to retreat to their separate sleeping areas in the cellar. One evening, about a month into their work, Thatcher found himself watching Karga as she worked on repairing a section of wall. She had taken off her outer layer, working in just a thin shirt, her muscles moving beneath her green skin as she lifted stones into place. There was a grace to her movements, a competence that he found increasingly attractive. She caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," he said quickly, feeling his face heat. "Just, you are very good at this, at masonry, at all of it, building, hunting, surviving. You are incredible." Karga set down the stone she was holding, her amber eyes fixed on him. "You keep saying things like that." "Like what?" "Kind things, compliments, as if I am not an orc, not something to be feared or hated." "You are not something to be feared," Thatcher said. "You are Karga. You are smart and strong and resourceful. Why would I not notice that?" She looked away, and he saw vulnerability flash across her face. "Because no one else ever has. In my clan, I was just another warrior, another tool for the chief's use. Here I am just an orc, a monster, but you—" She trailed off. "But I what? You look at me like I am a person, like I matter." Thatcher stood up, crossing to where she stood by the wall. "You do matter. To me, you matter a great deal." The air between them felt charged, heavy with something unspoken. Karga's breathing quickened, and he saw her pupils dilate. For a moment he thought she might kiss him, might close the distance between them. But then she stepped back, breaking the moment. "I should finish this section before dark." "Right. Of course." Thatcher felt the loss of the moment like a physical ache but did not push. This was new territory for both of them, and it had to happen at the right pace, if it happened at all. Winter deepened, and with it came new challenges. Snow made the work harder, and supplies from town became less frequent. But they persisted, slowly making the house habitable. They managed to get one room completely weatherproof, with a functioning roof and a small fireplace. It was a huge victory, and they celebrated by sleeping in the house for the first time instead of the cellar. "This is amazing," Thatcher said, looking around at the solid walls, the warm fire. "We built this. We actually built this." "We still have a long way to go," Karga said, but she was smiling, pride evident in her expression. "Yes, but we have come so far already. A few months ago I was being abandoned in a snowstorm. Now I have a roof over my head and—" He stopped, suddenly aware of what he had been about to say. "And what?" Karga asked softly. "And the best friend I have ever had," he finished, the words true if not quite complete. Something flickered in her eyes, disappointment maybe, or relief. "You are my best friend too, Thatcher. My only friend, really." That night, they slept in the same room for the first time since those first desperate nights. It was practical, they told themselves. Only one room was finished, and it was warmer to share space. But as Thatcher lay on his bedroll, listening to Karga breathe on the other side of the room, he knew the excuse was wearing thin. He was falling for her. Had probably been falling for her since that first night when he had held her and refused to let her die. Every day since had only deepened the feelings until they were a constant presence, coloring every interaction, every shared moment. But he did not know if she felt the same way. And even if she did, there was the very real problem of what they were: a human and an orc. It was not just taboo, it was dangerous. If anyone found out, they would both be in serious trouble, so he kept his feelings to himself, buried them deep, and tried to be content with her friendship. Winter gave way to early spring, and with the better weather came more visitors to the property. Eldridge came to inspect their progress and seemed genuinely impressed. Other townspeople began to stop by, some curious, some suspicious. Karga made herself scarce during these visits, staying out of sight, and Thatcher made excuses about having a shy partner. But one day, a visitor arrived who would not be put off by excuses. Thatcher was working on replacing rotten floorboards in the house when he heard the horse approach. He went outside to find a woman dismounting, tall and broad-shouldered, with a sword at her hip and the bearing of a soldier. "Can I help you?" he asked. The woman looked around the property, taking in the repairs, the cleared land. "I am Captain Thatcher Ellis of the Town Guard. I have been hearing reports about this place, about the work being done here. Eldridge says you have a partner. I would like to meet them." Thatcher's heart sank. Thatcher Ellis. The shared last name could be coincidence, but he did not think so. There was something in her face, in the set of her jaw, that reminded him of his own reflection. "My partner is out checking traps," he said carefully. "May be gone for a while. I can wait." There was no way around it. Teresa was settling in, clearly prepared to stay until she got what she wanted. Thatcher went to find Karga, who was actually working on the barn frame, and quickly explained the situation. "If she is with the guard, this could be bad," Karga said, her face tight with worry. "They could decide I am a threat, drive me out. Or we could be honest," Thatcher said. "Show her all the work we have done, prove that you are not a threat. She seems reasonable. She is a soldier." Soldiers do not tend to be reasonable about orcs. Maybe this one will be different. When they returned to the house, Teresa was examining their work, running her hands over the newly repaired walls. She turned as they approached, and her eyes widened slightly as she took in Karga. "So it is true," she said. "You are working with an orc." "Her name is Karga," Thatcher said firmly. "She is my partner, and she has done more work on this property than I have. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with Eldridge, who hired us knowing exactly what we were." Teresa held up a hand. "Peace. I am not here to cause trouble. I am here because—" She paused, studying Thatcher's face. "How old are you?" 23. "Why, and your parents, never knew them, grew up in an orphanage in Seagate." Teresa's expression shifted, becoming complex, almost pained. "Seagate. 23 years ago, that fits." "Fits what?" Thatcher demanded. Teresa was quiet for a long moment, seeming to struggle with something. Finally, she said, "I had a child once, a son. I was young, not much older than you are now, and not married. The father was a merchant who left town when I told him. I could not raise a child alone, not with my career in the Guard. So I took him to an orphanage in Seagate. He would be about your age now." Thatcher felt the ground shift beneath him. "You think I am your son? I think it is possible. The timing is right, and there is something about you. You look like my brother did at your age. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I have spent 23 years wondering what happened to the baby I gave up, and when I heard there was a young man here about the right age with the name Ellis." She spread her hands. "I had to come see. I had to know." Karga stepped forward. "This is a lot for him to process. Maybe you should go, give him time to think." Teresa looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "You care about him." "Yes," Karga said simply. "And you, Thatcher, what is she to you?" Thatcher found his voice. "Everything. She is everything to me." Teresa nodded slowly. "Then I will leave you to talk, but Thatcher, if you want to know more, if you want to, I live in town, the Guard House. You can find me there." She mounted her horse and rode away, leaving Thatcher and Karga standing in stunned silence. "Are you all right?" Karga asked finally. "I do not know," Thatcher admitted. "All my life I wondered about my parents, told myself stories about them. Sometimes they were dead, sometimes they had good reasons for leaving me. Never thought one of them might just show up one day and say sorry, had to focus on my career." She seemed regretful. "That does not change what she did." Karga put a hand on his shoulder. "No, but maybe it means something that she came looking for you, that she still cares." Thatcher turned to her, and suddenly all the feelings he had been suppressing came rushing to the surface. "You said I was everything to you." "I did. Did you mean it?" "Yes." Her amber eyes were steady on his. "I meant it, Karga." He stopped, fear warring with need. "I do not know how to say this." "Then show me." He kissed her, crossed the distance between them, and pressed his lips to hers, feeling the warmth of her, the slight sharpness of her tusks against his mouth. She made a small sound of surprise, then kissed him back, her strong arms coming around him, pulling him close. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thatcher rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for months." "So have I," she admitted. "But I was afraid you only saw me as a friend, or worse, as a burden you had taken on." "Never a burden. Karga, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. These months with you, building this place, they have been the happiest of my life. Mine too." She cupped his face in her hands. "I love you, Thatcher Ellis. I do not know what that means for us, or if we can even have a future together. But I love you." "I love you too," he said, the words coming easily, naturally. "And we will figure out the rest. We always do." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally went inside, it was together, hands intertwined. That night, they lay together in the room they had built, wrapped in each other's arms. They did not make love, not yet. Both of them sensed that there was more to work through, more to understand about what this meant. But they held each other, and whispered promises in the dark. and let themselves be happy. Over the following weeks, Thatcher visited Teresa several times. The conversations were awkward, stilted, full of 23 years of absence and uncertainty. But slowly, carefully, they began to build something. Not quite a parent-child relationship, but maybe something like friendship, or at least understanding. Teresa, for her part, proved to be surprisingly open-minded about Karga. She came to the property several times, bringing supplies, helping with the work. She and Karga developed a grudging respect for each other, both warriors in their own way, both understanding strength and honor. "She is good for you," Teresa told Thatcher one day as they worked on repairing fence posts. "I can see that you are happy." "I am," Thatcher admitted. "Happier than I ever thought I could be. Does it bother you, what people will say about you being with an orc?" "People have been saying things about me my whole life. I am used to it." Teresa hammered in a post, her expression thoughtful. "I was worried when I gave you up that you would have a hard life. Looks like I was right to worry, but you turned out well anyway. Strong, kind, brave enough to love someone that everyone else would tell you to hate. I am proud of you, even if I have no right to be." Thatcher looked at her, this woman who was his mother but also a stranger, and felt something in his chest soften. "Thank you, that means something." Spring turned to summer, and the work on the property continued. They got the barn rebuilt, cleared 2 of the fields, made the house fully livable. Eldridge was thrilled with their progress and began talking about future projects, other properties he owned that needed work. And through it all, Thatcher and Karga grew closer. They worked together during the day, their movements synchronized, anticipating each other's needs. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, talking and laughing, or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. At night, they slept in each other's arms, the boundaries between them dissolving slowly, naturally. One evening in midsummer, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Karga spoke. "I never thought I could have this." "Have what?" "A home. Someone who loves me. A future that is mine to choose." She leaned against him. "In the clan, everything was decided for me, and when I ran, I thought I was trading one kind of nothing for another, but this." She gestured at the property, at the house they had built together. "This is real. This is ours." "It is," Thatcher agreed, "and it is more than I ever dreamed of having." "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "When this property is finished, when Eldridge does not need us anymore?" "Sometimes. But I am not worried. We will figure it out, same as we always do." "I want to stay here," Karga said suddenly. "I know the property belongs to Eldridge, but I want to find a way to stay, to make this our permanent home." Thatcher felt a surge of hope. "You do?" "Yes. I want to wake up here every morning for the rest of my life. I want to grow old here with you." She turned to look at him. "Is that stupid? Is that asking for too much?" "No," he said firmly. "It is not stupid, and it is not too much, and I want the same thing. Then we need to talk to Eldridge, see if there is a way to buy the property or work out some kind of arrangement." The next day, they went to town together, a journey they had been making more frequently as people got used to Karga's presence. There were still stares, still muttered comments, but there was also grudging acceptance. They had proven themselves through hard work and peaceful behavior, and that counted for something. Eldridge listened to their proposal with interest. "You want to buy the Miller place, if possible," Thatcher said. "We can pay in labor, keep working for you on other projects until the debt is settled, or we can arrange some other payment plan. But we want to stay there permanently, make it our home." Eldridge leaned back in his chair, studying them. "I will be honest with you. That property is worth more now than when you started. The work you have done has increased its value significantly. I could sell it for a good profit." Thatcher's heart sank, but Eldridge held up a hand. "However," he continued, "I am a businessman, not a fool. You two have proven yourselves to be reliable, hardworking, and trustworthy. Those are rare qualities. So here is my offer. You continue working for me, taking on projects around the area. In exchange, I will sell you the property at the price I originally paid for it, with payment deferred until you can afford it. The property becomes yours, but you continue to work for me for at least 5 more years. After that, we renegotiate. Thatcher looked at Karga, saw the hope blazing in her eyes. We accept. Good. Eldridge pulled out papers, began writing. I will draw up a contract. You should have Teresa look it over, make sure everything is legal and fair. But if we are all in agreement, we can finalize this by the end of the week. They walked out of Eldridge's shop in a daze. Halfway down the street, Karga suddenly laughed, a joyous sound that turned heads. She grabbed Thatcher and spun him around, both of them laughing like children. We have a home, she said, her eyes bright with tears. An actual home. We do, Thatcher agreed, grinning so wide his face hurt. We really do. That night, back at the property that would soon legally be theirs, they celebrated. Karga hunted a deer, and they roasted it over an open fire, eating until they were full and then eating some more. They drank a bottle of wine that Teresa had given them, passing it back and forth, getting pleasantly tipsy under the stars. I have to tell you something, Karga said as they lay on their backs, looking up at the night sky. About my clan. What about them? I ran away, but I never formally renounced my place in the clan. In orc culture, that means technically, I am still bound by their rules, still expected to return if called. She rolled onto her side to face him. I want to make it official. Send word to my father that I am never coming back, that I am making my own life here. Is that dangerous? Would he come after you, maybe? Probably not, though. The Frostbite clan has more important concerns than one rebellious daughter, but I need to do it. I need to close that chapter of my life completely. Then we will do it, Thatcher said. Together. She kissed him, slow and sweet. Together. The letter was sent the next week, carried by a traveling merchant who knew the routes to orc territories. Karga's message was simple and direct. She was alive, she was well, she had made a new life, and she would not be returning. She wished them strength and prosperity, but she was no longer part of the Frostbite clan. Weeks passed with no response, and gradually, Karga began to relax. It seemed her father had accepted her decision, or at least decided she was not worth the trouble of pursuing. They continued their work, taking on projects for Eldridge throughout the region. They repaired fences, built storage sheds, helped with harvests. Karga's reputation as a skilled builder spread, and to everyone's surprise, people began requesting her specifically for difficult jobs. She was still an orc, still faced prejudice, but her competence was undeniable. Thatcher found his own niche, using his acting skills to negotiate deals, smooth over conflicts, and charm difficult clients. Together, they became known as reliable, skilled, and surprisingly pleasant to work with. One evening in late autumn, nearly a year after they had first found the Miller place, Thatcher made a decision. He rode into town and found a jeweler, a wizened old man who worked out of a small shop near the market. I need a ring, Thatcher said. The jeweler raised an eyebrow. For a proposal. Yes, and the lucky lady is an orc, Thatcher said firmly. If that is a problem, I will take my business elsewhere. The jeweler studied him for a long moment, then smiled. No problem at all, young man. Love is love, and I have seen stranger pairings. Now, what did you have in mind? They designed the ring together. Something simple but beautiful. Silver with a small green stone that reminded Thatcher of Karga's skin. It took 2 weeks to make, and Thatcher visited every other day to check on the progress, nervous and excited in equal measure. When it was finally ready, he carried it home with the care of someone transporting the most precious thing in the world. He chose a night when the weather was perfect, clear and cool, with a full moon lighting up the landscape. He led Karga outside after dinner to the field they had cleared together, now planted with winter wheat that swayed in the gentle breeze. "I have been thinking," he said, his heart pounding, "about everything that has happened, about how we got here." "And?" Karga asked, curious but not yet understanding. "And I realized that every good thing in my life, every moment of happiness, has been because of you. You saved me just as much as I saved you that night in the storm, maybe more. Thatcher." He knelt down, pulling out the ring. "Karga, daughter of Grolmak, formerly of the Frostbite clan, currently of the Miller place, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Will you marry me?" Karga stared at the ring, then at him, her amber eyes wide with shock. "You want to marry me more than anything." "But I am an orc. There are laws against this kind of thing, social taboos. It will make your life harder." "My life has always been hard, but with you it is also joyful and full and worth living. So yes, I want to marry you. I want to stand in front of everyone and declare that you are mine and I am yours. I want to build a life with you, have a family if we are lucky, grow old watching sunsets from our porch. I want all of it if you will have me." Tears spilled down her green cheeks. "Yes. Yes, of course I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him to his feet, kissing him with a passion that made his head spin. They held each other in the moonlit field, and Thatcher felt a completeness he had never known, a sense of being exactly where he was supposed to be. Planning the wedding proved to be complicated. There was no official who would perform a ceremony marrying a human to an orc. The town's priest refused outright, and even the magistrate seemed uncomfortable with the idea. It was Teresa who provided the solution. "The captain of the guard has the legal authority to perform marriages in the absence of other officials," she said. "And as it happens, I am the captain of the guard." "You would do that?" Thatcher asked, surprised. "Of course. You are my son even if we came to that relationship late, and Karga is a good woman who makes you happy. Why would I not support this?" So it was arranged. The ceremony would be small, held at the Miller place, with Teresa officiating. They invited Eldridge, a few of the workers they had befriended over the months, and anyone else who wanted to come. To their surprise, quite a few people showed up. Word had spread about the wedding, and while many townspeople stayed away, others came out of curiosity or genuine support. Even a few orcs appeared, traveling from the southern territories, having heard about Karga's new life and wanting to witness this unprecedented union. The ceremony was simple. Karga wore a dress that Teresa had helped her make, deep blue with silver embroidery. Thatcher wore his best clothes, cleaned and mended for the occasion. They stood in front of the house they had built together, with Teresa presiding. "We are here to witness the union of Thatcher Ellis and Karga, formerly of the Frostbite clan," Teresa began. "This is an unusual marriage, one that crosses lines that many consider uncrossable. But love does not care about lines drawn by fear or tradition. Love goes where it will, and these two have found it in each other." She looked at Thatcher. "Do you, Thatcher Ellis, take this woman as your wife to love and honor, to stand beside through good times and bad, for as long as you both live?" "I do," Thatcher said, his voice steady. "And do you, Karga, take this man as your husband to love and honor, to stand beside through good times and bad, for as long as you both live?" "I do," Karga said, her tusked smile radiant. "Then, by the authority vested in me as captain of the guard of Millbrook, I pronounce you husband and wife." They kissed to cheers and applause, and for a moment, all the complications and prejudices fell away. There was only joy, only two people who had found each other against all odds and chosen to build a life together. The celebration lasted into the night. Food and drink flowed freely, and people danced and sang. Even some of the skeptical townspeople seemed to warm up, seeing the genuine happiness between the newlyweds. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Thatcher and Karga stood together, watching the last stragglers make their way home. "I cannot believe we actually did it," Karga said, leaning against her new husband. "We are married." "We are," Thatcher agreed. "How does it feel?" "Perfect." "Scary, like the beginning of something huge." She turned to him. "Do you regret it? Taking on an orc wife, all the complications that brings?" "Never," he said firmly. "You are the best decision I ever made." They went inside, to the bedroom they had built and furnished together, and closed the door on the rest of the world. That night, they consummated their marriage, discovering each other with a tenderness and passion that made all the struggles worthwhile. The first years of their marriage were not easy. They faced continued prejudice from some quarters, occasional threats from those who believed interspecies relationships were abominations. There were tense moments, times when Thatcher feared for Karga's safety or his own, but they also had support. Teresa became a fierce advocate, using her position to shield them from the worst of the harassment. Eldridge continued to provide steady work and became something like a mentor. The community of people who had attended their wedding formed a protective circle, vouching for them, defending them when needed. And through it all, their love deepened. They learned each other's moods, each other's needs. They fought sometimes, both having strong wills and opinions, but they always worked through it, always came back to the fundamental truth that they were better together than apart. 2 years after their wedding, Karga told Thatcher she was pregnant. He was repairing the barn roof when she called up to him, her voice strange. He climbed down immediately, concerned. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," she said, and he saw tears on her face. "Thatcher, I am with child." He nearly dropped his hammer. "You are. We are going to have a baby." "Yes." He let out a whoop of joy and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents, we are," she said, her smile incandescent. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. The pregnancy progressed well, though there were concerns about what a half-human, half-orc child would face in the world. They tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on preparing, converting one of the rooms into a nursery, gathering supplies. Teresa was ecstatic at the prospect of becoming a grandmother, whatever the circumstances. She visited frequently, helping with preparations, sharing advice from her own experience. When Karga went into labor on a cold winter morning, Thatcher was terrified. They had arranged for a midwife, a practical woman named Alwyn who had delivered dozens of babies and did not care about species differences. She arrived quickly, taking charge of the situation with calm efficiency. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Thatcher feared they would lose either Karga or the baby or both. But Karga was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and she fought through the pain with a determination that awed him. When the baby finally emerged, squalling and perfect, Thatcher felt his heart break open with love. "It is a boy," Alwyn announced, cleaning the infant and handing him to Karga. Thatcher knelt beside the bed, looking at his son. The baby had green-tinged skin, lighter than Karga's but darker than a human's. His eyes were amber like his mother's, his ears slightly pointed. He had no visible tusks yet, but there were small bumps on his lower gums where they would eventually grow. "He is beautiful," Thatcher breathed. "He is," Karga agreed, cradling their son with infinite gentleness. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never settled on anything. Now, looking at his child, Thatcher said, "How about Ellis?" After your mother, after Teresa, after the name that brought us together. Ellis, Karga tested the name. I like it. Hello, little Ellis. Welcome to the world. The baby's arrival changed everything and nothing. Sleepless nights became the norm, as did the endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. But through it all, there was joy, a profound sense of rightness. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people congratulated them, cooed over the baby, treated him like any other newborn. Others kept their distance, uncomfortable with the tangible evidence of human orc union. A few made threats, which Teresa dealt with swiftly and firmly, but mostly, life went on. They continued their work, with Karga taking on lighter jobs during the early months of motherhood. Thatcher found he could balance construction work with childcare, often carrying Ellis in a sling while he negotiated deals or planned projects. Ellis grew quickly, a sturdy, curious child who seemed to have inherited the best of both parents. He had Karga's strength and directness, Thatcher's curiosity and charm. He was smart, learning to talk early, asking endless questions about everything. When Ellis was 3, Karga got pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy felt easier, their preparation more confident. They welcomed a daughter they named Alara, who had her father's brown eyes and her mother's fierce spirit. The years passed in a blur of work and family and community. The Miller place, once abandoned and hopeless, became a thriving homestead. They expanded, adding more buildings, clearing more land. They hired help occasionally, paying fair wages, treating workers with respect regardless of species. Thatcher's relationship with Teresa deepened. She was a constant presence in her grandchildren's lives, teaching Ellis to ride, showing Alara how to defend herself. She never pushed Thatcher to call her mother, understanding that their relationship was its own unique thing. But there was love between them, clear and uncomplicated. When Ellis was 7 and Alara 4, they faced their biggest challenge yet. A group of human supremacists from a neighboring region began making noise about Millbrook's tolerance of orcs, specifically targeting Karga and her children as examples of everything wrong with the world. The threats escalated quickly. Someone set fire to their barn one night, destroying months of work. Karga found a dead animal on their doorstep with a threatening message. Ellis came home from town in tears after being called horrible names by older children. Thatcher wanted to fight, to confront the supremacists directly, but Teresa counseled caution. They are trying to provoke you, to make you do something that will give them an excuse to come after you legally. Do not give them the satisfaction. Instead, they worked through official channels. Teresa used her position to investigate, to track down the perpetrators. Eldridge, now an old man but still influential, rallied other merchants to support them. The community that had slowly accepted Karga over the years came together, forming a protective wall around the family. It culminated in a town meeting where the supremacists tried to rally support for driving out all orcs. But they found themselves facing a unified opposition. Person after person stood up to speak in Karga's defense, citing her hard work, her fairness, her contributions to the community. Teresa gave the closing speech, her voice ringing with authority. This family has lived here for 10 years. They have built a home, raised children, treated everyone with respect. They have broken no laws, caused no trouble, done nothing but work hard and live their lives. If we drive them out now, what does that say about us? What does that say about the kind of community we want to be? The vote, when it came, was overwhelmingly in favor of allowing Karga and her family to stay. The supremacists, defeated and outnumbered, left town, and the threats stopped. That night, after putting the children to bed, Thatcher and Karga sat on their porch, looking out at the land they had built together. We almost lost everything, Karga said quietly, But we did not, Thatcher replied, because we have something stronger than hate. We have community, family, love. Those things are worth fighting for, I know. But sometimes I wonder if we are being selfish, raising our children in a world that will always see them as outsiders, as half-breeds. Thatcher took her hand. They are not half-breeds. They are whole people with the best of both their heritages. And yes, they will face challenges. But they will also have strength, resilience, and most importantly, they will know they are loved. That is more than I had growing up, more than you had. We are giving them something better. Karga squeezed his hand. You are right, as always, not always, but sometimes, she laughed, leaning against him. I love you, Thatcher Ellis. I love you too, Karga Ellis. More years passed. Ellis grew into a strong, thoughtful young man who could wield a hammer as skillfully as his mother and negotiate as cleverly as his father. Alara became fierce and independent, dreaming of becoming a guard like her grandmother. The Miller place became known throughout the region as a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over fear. Other mixed-species couples began to emerge, emboldened by Thatcher and Karga's example. The world was changing, slowly but surely. Teresa, now in her 50s, eventually retired from the Guard, choosing to spend more time with her family. She moved into a small cottage on the Miller property, joking that she wanted to be close enough to spoil her grandchildren but far enough away to maintain some privacy. Eldridge passed away peacefully at the age of 82, leaving a substantial portion of his estate to Thatcher and Karga in recognition of their years of loyal service. It was enough to expand their operations significantly, to hire more workers, to help other struggling families get started. One evening, when Thatcher was 45 and Karga 44, they sat on their porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. You remember the first night we met? Karga asked. Of course. You were half frozen, dying in a snowstorm. I was abandoned and lost. We both should have died that night. But you saved me, built a fire, held me until the shaking stopped. And you saved me right back, gave me purpose, taught me what it means to have a home. Karga rested her head on his shoulder. Sometimes I try to imagine what my life would have been like if you had walked past me that night, if I had frozen on that road. Do not, Thatcher said firmly. That is not what happened. We found each other and we built something beautiful together. We did, she agreed. We really did. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. In the distance, they could hear Ellis and Alara laughing at something, their voices carrying across the fields. From Teresa's cottage came the smell of baking bread. This was their life, hard-won and precious. A human and an orc who should have been enemies, who should have been separated by prejudice and tradition, who had instead chosen love. And from that choice had come a family, a home, a legacy that would endure. Thatcher reached over and took Karga's hand, intertwining their fingers. After all these years, her touch still sent warmth through him, still felt like coming home. I would do it all again, he said quietly. Every hard moment, every struggle, every threat. All of it just to end up here with you. Even the part where I was half frozen and you had to strip down and hold me, she teased, especially that part. That was when I knew. Knew what? That you were going to change my life forever. I just did not realize it would be in such a wonderful way. Karga turned to him, her amber eyes soft with love. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. Freedom, choice, a partner who sees me as an equal, children who can be themselves, a life that is truly mine. Ours, he corrected. A life that is ours. Ours, she agreed and kissed him, sweet and familiar and full of promise. The stars began to emerge overhead, countless points of light in the darkening sky. Somewhere inside, Ellis called that dinner was ready. Teresa would be joining them shortly, bringing that fresh bread. Alara would monopolize the conversation with stories from her day. It was ordinary and perfect, this life they had built from the ashes of their separate despairs. And as they rose from their seats, hands still intertwined, walking together toward the house filled with light and laughter and love, Thatcher felt nothing but gratitude for the storm that had brought them together, for his decision to stop and help a dying orc girl, for every moment since that had led them here. They had survived the cold, survived the prejudice, survived every obstacle the world had thrown at them, and they had not just survived. They had thrived, had built something lasting and true. As they crossed the threshold into their home, surrounded by family and warmth and the smell of dinner cooking, Thatcher caught Karga's eye and smiled. She smiled back, and in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. They had found each other in the snow, two lost souls who should have died alone. Instead, they had lived, had loved, had created a future neither could have imagined, and it was, in every way that mattered, exactly the happily ever after they deserved.